Hey everyone, this is Chris with Light Coalition again. I have a bunch of stuff to talk about and to test today, so I am definitely going to try and cut this video up into different things because some of the tests are going to take an hour, some are going to take 3 hours, some are going to take different setups, but I will walk you guys through it along the way. One thing I wanted to start with is I had a great comment on the second video that talked about why the initial water that was untreated changed differently. So in the first video, she mentioned, that the initial reading was a 300 and then it went down to a 259. And then the second video with, different bottled water, different location, different time, it started lower at 230 and went up to 262. Well, that actually showed a great change in the fact that there's some sort of natural equilibrium that we're seeing with this water testing, that no matter where the start point is, and the start point can be manipulated in different ways. If we're saying that water can be affected energetically and that it can be structured or non-structured or however you want to explain it, then if you take that first bottle of water and it was around a lot of power lines or a lot of, different types of waves and electromagnetic forces and different things that can affect it, or if it's been sitting a long time, or the person that was holding it was in a bad mood, or, all these things can affect it energetically. And we can see that we have different starting points. So whether 300 or 230, it still ended up in that same gold range of sending healing out or being in that energetic healing state. So I thought that was one of the coolest things we've seen so far, is that it went up or down, which shows that there is some sort of equilibrium that we need to work with and hope to get in that range every time we use the Vortex device. So today's first experiment is just going to be a standard water through the structuring device and then measuring it afterwards. But I'm going to start with just regular bottled water here that has not been opened, and then I have distilled water here because you read different things about distilled water either being really good for you or being hungry water, and that it's going to want to leach things out. So I'm curious to see which one holds this reading, this healing type energy longer. So what I'm going to do first is run them both through here, measure them, write them down, and then wait about an hour and just see which one held it the longest. And then, other experiments I'm going to run through is, somebody had asked about length. Does length matter? So I'm going to run whichever one comes out better, I'm going to run it through the structuring device about 10 times, which would equal, a really long device, and kind of see what we get from that. And then I'm also going to do a few other things with absorption tests. I have a little macro lens for my iPhone. I'm going to try to get really close into the material, which I'm going to use is cardboard, and just kind of put a drop of each and see which one absorbs better, and that will kind of tell us the surface tension. And then there's a few other things I'm going to go through, but let's go ahead and get started with the first part that I have to wait on initially. Of course, I have my Michael Jackson gloves, so I'm not interfering with the reading. We're just running this through one time. And one thing I was thinking about that could actually change the test is that this still has a little bit of water in it, and if it's this good water and it's able to assimilate and change other water, is this water being affected by the water that's in here? That I don't know, and that's going to be a test for later. I'm actually going to set two cups together, one that has not been treated and one that has been treated, and see if it, just by being next to it, affects the water, and if so, how long can that last? And what I'm learning is not to really worry about testing the side so much. We can see it change, but I think the energy is and the frequency is able to be tested better from the top. So that's kind of just what I've been doing. So we're going to zero this guy out, make sure there's no issues around us, no interference. They're on the 3 gigahertz range. Slow it down, and we'll measure. Alright, we're in the 258.39 range, which is that sweet spot that we were talking about. $258.39, and you saw it blinking, so you saw that I wasn't changing it or doing anything with it. So that's pretty darn close. Matter of fact, I think it's the same exact reading. So interesting to see that distilled water and bottled water. This is actually spring water. Measured the same thing. So now what we're gonna do is kind of keep them separate so they can affect each other, hopefully, and then come back in about an hour and see where we sit. Hey everyone, it's been an hour, so I'm going to measure the distilled water and the bottled water. So let's zero it out here. Now based on this measurement system, when I measure human auras or different types of things, I get two different measurements depending on where I'm located. For example, if I measure within 2 inches, I'm measuring like the physical body of a human. Where if I'm measuring within a foot, I'm getting kind of the energy body or the emotional body or the kind of the auric field. So I've been playing with different measurements for the water because are we measuring the energy or the aura of the water? Or are we measuring the actual physical attributes, the frequency of the energy that's close to it? So what I'm finding is if I go in between that kind of magic space there, I get the most consistent numbers. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. So that's 244. It started at 249, so it did drop a little, but not a whole bunch. And also what I'm doing when I measure is making sure that I point my body away from it, because I don't want my energy field or my chakras to kind of mess up the measurement. Yeah, and that's 264. That's pretty much in our range. So it does look like that the bottled water does hold the charge or the change that happens through the Vortex device. Yeah, 265. So we're kind of in that sweet spot, around 250, higher 250s, lower 260s. But here's the chart that I use. It's from a company called Resonant Field Imaging, or actually that's the name of the product. But you can search for it, or I'll have links to it. But this is the software readout and the measurements that I use for the frequencies. And you can see, for example, burgundy here is 101, so it works in harmonics. You would get 202.5, 101.2. So it just works on those types of measurements, and that's kind of where I get a lot of my information from. So I think we're going to choose the bottled water and use that forward. It does seem to hold the charge a little better. Not that the distilled water doesn't, but maybe it's the minerals in the water, the metals, something that's naturally in there that helps hold the charge. So we will continue with the other test with the bottled water. Okay, hey everyone, I'm back. And based on the readings that I saw, the distilled water came back with that 208 only after an hour, and the bottled water actually held steady. And that's our range that we were looking for, the 263, which is right there, the 249 to 264. So I'm going to stick with the bottled water and run these tests and see what happens. So the first one we're going to do is the 10 times. I'm going to go ahead and get my bottle here and start with one. So there's one. Try not to make too much of a mess here. I think I'm going to stand up for this one. what you do is going to be a mess. I think that's pretty close. I'll clean up this mess in a little bit. So this is the 10 times. Now we'll go ahead and get our measurement. So this one says 248. Over it one more time. Actually, I think that's already in our range. The gold here, 249. So that's pretty darn close. That's on its way there. Yeah. Okay. So that's fluctuating a little bit. We'll see where it evens out at. Now I'm going to take, just running it one time, which looks like we're running out of water. Alright, so this is going to be the one time that's set alone by itself. This one over here is the one that's set on 10. Now we're going to do one that's not treated at all. Set this over here. And then we'll use this water here to run it through one more time and see if it affects the other. So we have the non-treated and the rocks glass, and then the small glass here that will pass it just once through. Pretty perfect right there. And yeah, again, I'm making a mess, but it's fun, right? Okay, so there we have it, and I'm going to come back in 3 hours and see what we get. Okay, it's been 3 hours, so we're going to go ahead and measure these. I've been taking a few measurements off camera, and what I'm noticing is that initially when you first run it through the vortex, the strongest signal, or that equilibrium point, is going to be closest to the water. But as time grows, it's like the field has, starting to dissipate, and the field actually grows out. So I don't know if the initial cycle is kind of a compression, and then the second half of the discharge cycle is an expansion. So at first it kind of strengthens it, as close to the water as possible, and then as it goes, it spans out and gets bigger. But it's very interesting to read our sweet spot being a little bit farther away, but it's still getting the measurement. So that says 238, which is close, but not quite where we want it to be. And this is, the one I'm measuring now is the 10 times. We've run it through 10 times. Yeah, 239. So it's like when I get to that spot I mentioned earlier, like the aura spot instead of the physical body spot, it actually is stronger this way. So 246. So it increases when I get to about a foot. And that's actually where I measure chakras on a human, is about 8 to 12 inches. So it's interesting to see that the water changes from, you know, close to farther away. There's 259, there's that sweet spot. So we can do the same for this one. And I'll leave that one open to interpretation as I continue to do tests. But it does seem like the sweet spot of that field gets farther and farther away. 257, that was 259. So we can measure close and far away on these. This sample is the one that we ran through the device on the left, and then the one on the right. See, that one's 263, and that's the one that we just ran one time, but it's next to another one that hasn't been treated. So let's measure the one that's not been treated. It's actually 270, and that should also be, looking at our chart here, 270 is in the yellow, so almost at the gold, but I bet if we went a little bit farther away, it would measure right where we wanted it to. Okay, interesting. So that one's 267 there. If we went closer to this one, which has also only been run through one time, it gets us 198. So that's what I'm saying is it looks like the field expands out. You know, the field does, and then this one, with something that's actually working with, it keeps it close. So what I'm going to do now is basically, since I found these cool different measurements, is to let it go 24 hours and then see what it measures out, if the field is bigger or if the field is gone. So if we measure, you know, around a foot tomorrow and it's down to that, you know, red or different color or lower frequency, then we can say that it's probably lost all of its charge. So I will come in tomorrow and measure these three and see what we get. Okay, well, it's been 24 hours, so let's go ahead and test these samples. So the first one on the left is the one that we did 10 times. I'm trying to hit that sweet spot of about a foot away that I'm noticing. Alright, so getting a 247, which is not in our gold range. Gold range is about 249, so it still has held it close, but it's not exactly where we want it to be. Okay, here we go. This was the one we just ran through one time. That one's at 253. So, well, let's try this one again a little bit higher, a little bit farther away, see if that affects it. $246. So actually they're pretty close, but the one that we ran through once is actually a little bit stronger than the one we ran through 10 times. So I guess what I would say, yeah, 251, which when we look at the chart, gold, that's right in that range. So this one stayed pretty close. This one stayed inside that range. So after 24 hours, these have still stayed charged. This one adjusted a little, but that could be, you know, all different types of things. I have wireless in this room. The fact that my phone's near it, you know, things can affect it, but I think that they kind of hold steady after 24 hours. So last time we found that this one stayed in that equilibrium range closer because it was actually working on something else. So let's see what we get when it's close. 265. So again, we're looking for the gold range. That's actually right in there, 264 and below. That's 265. Let's see what it does when it's a little farther away. 266. Oh, it's a little higher. $255. So this is still staying in that range even though it has another glass of water that hasn't been treated right next to it. Let's see if the one that's been treated or non-treated actually is affected. So we get a 260, so right in that range. So basically, we sent this sample through the vortex. We did not treat this, but by being next to each other, this has affected this. So I wonder if we move this glass, and now let's test it. Now we got a 241, which is a little bit lower, so it does seem like this field was affecting that one, but let's see if we can get within that spot. Yeah, 165. Okay, interesting. So this one isn't as affected as much as sending it through the device, but it is manipulated some. I would say that the strength of the charging sending through the device versus setting it next to something that's been charged is a pretty big difference, but at least we know that it is helpful and it does affect it. Yeah, I think my meter's dying. It's going blank, so cool. I will look at the results and finish this up.